How you doing? The last time you and I got together, we were talking about Article 1 of the Constitution, which separates the powers of government into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. I hope you remember, as we talked about Article 1, that was all about the legislative, lawmaking branch of government. And before we go any further, let's give a shout out to a Frenchman named Montesquieu, who in the 1740s, I believe it was 1748, published a book called The Spirit of the Law. And in that book, you got to remember the time frame of that book. This is preceding the French Revolution in France in the 1740s, when things were pretty active on the continent. It was Montesquieu in that book that suggested that the best form of government would not allow power to be concentrated in one location. It should be separated into branches, says Montesquieu, with one branch, the legislative, making the laws, an executive branch enforcing them, and a judicial branch interpreting them. The founding fathers read Montesquieu and they took him seriously, and it's very clearly reflected in the Constitution. The Constitution is not a long or particularly complicated document, although it has been the subject of great debate over history and should be. Do yourself a favor. On your computer in front of you right now, if you have one, go into your search engine and look up the U.S. Constitution, or find it in a book sitting around in the house right now. One way or the other, try to find a copy. If you can't, I'll walk you through it. I'll give you a second. Go do that right now. Okay, seconds up. Now, we're reading Article 2. The very first paragraph should grab your attention. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the U.S. of America, United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with a Vice President chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Now, you will notice it says the President will serve a term of 4 years. There was no limitation on the number of terms when the Constitution was first ratified. And that remained the case until 1951. In 1951, the United States Congress passed the 22nd Amendment. And what the 22nd Amendment does is limit a president to 2 terms of office. Now, they don't have to be consecutive. And under very unusual circumstances, one person could be president for as long as 10 years under the provisions of Amendment 22. But that kind of applies directly to the very first statement in Article 2. When you look further in the next 2 paragraphs, they are long and they are somewhat complex. They're talking about the Electoral College and the method by which presidents should be elected. And those first couple of presidential elections, there were some problems that became immediately apparent. In the election of 1796, a Federalist by the name of John Adams ended up winning the election. His vice president was the anti-Federalist Thomas Jefferson. That did not work out too well. It wasn't exactly a compatible political relationship. Although, interestingly, Jefferson and Adams did become very close friends as they went on in their later lives. And the conditions of their death were one of the most bizarre coincidences in American history. We're going to find some time to talk about that too. But I want you to understand, because of the outcomes of the elections of 1796 and 1804, the 12th Amendment was passed, the election of 1800, the 12th Amendment was passed in 1804, altering the way presidential elections were conducted. So, to oversimplify, presidents and vice presidential candidates are linked together during the campaign so that you don't have the kind of results that occurred in 1796 and 1800 when you have persons in office that are so diametrically different in their political views. Now, if you drop down below that, it says in the next line, the Congress, this is the part, forgive my little pause. There's a phrase in here that talks about who's qualified to be president. it says the president must be a natural-born citizen. What that means right now is that to be president of the United States, you must have been born within the boundaries of the United States. You cannot be a naturalized citizen or acquired citizenship other than by that natural-born right. Now, that's been subject to some debate, but that's what the document says. The document also has an age requirement of 35 and a residency requirement of 14 years. Those 14 years don't have to be immediately before the president is elected, nor do they have to be consecutive. But before a person can hold that office, they must meet that residency requirement. The next section's a big deal. The next section talks about the removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office. The way it's stated in the original document has been altered. We now have Amendment 25, which was ratified in 1967, by which a president can be removed from office. But it ain't simple, and a lot of people have to go along with it. We will be talking about that separately as well. Pay attention to Amendment 25. The next one goes into the next line goes into the president's compensation. Yes, the president is paid. As I recall, I think his current standard salary is about $400,000 a year. Some see that as high, some do not. A lot of these guys could certainly be making that much or more in the private sector. I don't think that most persons that have held the office got it for the paycheck. I think their motivation was something other than that. There's also something here that says that the president shall not receive within that period that he's in office any other emolument from the United States or any of them, as in separate states. Moving on to Section 2. In this section, it describes the power of the president as the commander-in-chief of the military, the Army, and the Navy. Now remember, this is before there is an Air Force, and technically, the United States Marine Corps serves under the Department of the Navy. Be clear on that. The Coast Guard is a whole different thing. The Coast Guard was originally a part of, or under the umbrella of, the Department of the Treasury. It is currently not in the Department of Defense. It is under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security. Now, as far as this is concerned, there's another very important line here that most people tend to overlook. The president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy of the U.S. and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. Now you've got to understand, this is the militias that are in the service of the states. Think in terms of the National Guard. These serve under governmental jurisdiction. They are not independent of government control and label themselves militia. This is militia as established in the Constitution, and it has connection, direct official connection, to the U.S. branches of the military. It also says that the president has the power to make treaties, but those treaties cannot go into effect unless they have been ratified by the Senate with a 2/3 majority. And be clear on this, the 2/3 majority has to be of the senators present when the vote is taken on the particular treaty. So if 90 senators are present for the vote, 60 of those 90 would be adequate. But if there are 100 senators present for the vote, then you'll need that 67, 2/3 of 100. It goes on to say that the president has the power to appoint ambassadors, judges, and other officers of the United States. There's more, but again, I am rushing. Moving on to Section 3. This is kind of interesting. The president, and I'm reading directly, he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient expedient. Most people would read that to say that the president is required to deliver a State of the Union address, and most presidents have done so in January of any given year. But it's not necessarily a requirement that it be a speech, and not all presidents enjoyed public speaking. Jefferson certainly didn't. He was a brilliant writer, but he hated public speaking. So this one is not hard and fast that it has to be a public address, but the vast majority of the time it will be. Section 4 is short, but it's dynamite. Listen to this carefully. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Remember, 3 U.S. presidents have been impeached. Andrew Johnson in 1868. But he wasn't removed from office. He came within 1 vote of this in the Senate of that happening, but it did not happen. Then in the 1990s, President Clinton was impeached on a charge of perjury. And again, he survived the vote in the Senate and remained in office. As you well